What's up guys, my name is Robin and I make stuff, and today we're painting a rooster. But not just any rooster. This is like the biggest, hugest, fattest. In all seriousness, we're gonna use just two colors today, which is something that I do with my beginning students. It helps to explore light and shadow, which we also call value. As always, if you love hanging out with me and love watching me paint big, huge roosters, make sure you subscribe to my channel and give this video a like. Let's stop talking about roosters and get started. As usual, we want to draw a reference on our paper so we know where we're painting. We just want a basic guide. I'm going to be looking at the distance between his head and the top of the paper, his feet in the bottom, and his chest and this side, and leaving a good amount of space on that far side. He's kind of like a bit of a teardrop. Make sure that you're not drawing super dark and his beak comes out, you know, like this. And then he's got his comb, they call that a comb, crown, comb, whatever. And then he's got this wattle thing, which is the kind of goofy stuff underneath his beak. He's also got an eyeball in here. His head will be the most detailed. And I don't know. Eyeball needs to go over just a tad. Usually I don't let people erase, but you know what? I do what I want over here. He's got these like kind of long feathers that kind of sit on his neck, and then his chest feathers kind of pop out, and then he's got his wings. I'm just gonna make some notes of this comes down like this, and then he's got this piece that comes down like that, and then a little bonnet. And then at the bottom of his belly, he's got these thigh feathers. I don't know what those are called. What are those called? Chicken leg feathers? It doesn't have to be perfect. He's got some feet, whatever. Now, if you're someone that has chickens at home and you're looking at this rooster thinking, this looks nothing like any rooster I have ever seen, I'm gonna need you to check your bad attitude at the door because we're not done yet, so buckle up, Buttercup. He's got this feather thing that, you know, comes down, and then he's got a wing. Now his wing is tucked, so it kind of tucked back, but he's also got these other little tucks of feathers here that kind of go up on his back rooster rump, and then he's got those little feathers there. Wow, he's looking good. Cock-a-doodle-doo, mother truckers. We can have a lot of fun with a rooster tail. He's got some cool crazy feathers. Maybe we'll put a couple of those. That's about all we need. No, I'm not putting all those little dots in there. There's no point in doing that. This is not about drawing. This is about creating a guide that we can follow quickly and know where we're going to put our paint. If you are someone who's like, there is no way I could draw that. I don't even know how you just whipped that out. Calm down. I'm going to put a link to this rooster photo and this drawing that you can then download, and all you got to do, print this picture out, rub some charcoal on the back of it, put it on top of your paper, trace, and that will transfer a perfect guide to your paper. See, I got you. Let's paint. All right, listen up. This first part, very much like putting on layers, layer, layer, layer. What's the lightest color that you're seeing? Obviously his beak is super duper light. The feathers on his neck, very light. So we're gonna pick that color. Again, we're just using burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. That's it. How are we gonna get this background? We're not doing that. How are we gonna get the red on his? Follow along. So for this first pass, I'm going to pay attention to his whole body, and I'm going to paint it very fast. That is important. I don't want this paint to dry because we're going to do some other fun things while the paint is wet. But don't worry, if you don't move quickly enough, I'm going to show you how to remedy it. For many of my classes and my beginning students, I use these Cotman watercolors. They are not the highest quality, but they are super affordable, and I highly recommend them if you are just starting out and you want to learn these techniques and you're on a budget. They're super great. Check them out. I'm going to use these today, and we're going to see how this painting turns out. I'm not scared. I find that these colors are a little tad bit lighter than what you'd get from Daniel Smith. A little more on the orangey side, which is going to be fantastic for this rooster. We're going to start with burnt sienna, and we're going to paint that basically everywhere except for his tail. I want it nice and wet, enough water to go around, loading up my brush, mixing that paint in. This is kind of a creamy consistency here. You can see how orangey that coloring is. We're going to start up here with his comb, and I'm just going to use my big fat round brush. And I'm not going in every single line. Do not paint his beak. That's really important. But I am going to paint all the way down. Notice I'm not reloading my brush. I'm just moving that paint everywhere as quickly as I can, not overthinking it. Moving it through my rooster, painting it quickly. You do not have to be perfect. This is not about perfection. By the end, I can almost guarantee you that people are going to see this and be like, oh yeah, that's a rooster. While this is wet, we're going to come around with some clean water and just touch the edge of our brush to that edge just to give it some softness. So I'm going to put some clean water on my paper. Notice I went all the way to my tape. That's important. Boom, touched it. I touched it. Right up here, boom, touch that too. Maybe a little bit more, and that's gonna kind of soften that up. This is why you have to go fast. Put water on my paper, give this paint that I touch over here somewhere to go. Touched that. It's pretty dry. If I had a little more paint, again, this is not the final product that we're painting. This is just the undercolor. I'll put some paint right there where I put that wetness. This wasn't wet enough. And I want there to be some soft fuzziness here to his butt. This is dried pretty significantly. And if that happens, here's what you do. Right, like this looks terrible. Just follow along. I'm putting some water down here so you can see what happens. If it dries, you can wet the whole thing all over again, but you gotta wet the whole thing. Otherwise, you will get blooms. Again, I don't really care if I'm getting blooms on here or not. I'm gonna wash my brush out. I'm gonna get some of my blue. Straight up ultramarine blue. As you can see in the bottom of his leg, super dark. So we're just going to tap our brush right here a couple times at the bottom of that wing. Those areas are also pretty dark. Ooh, look at that. That's gonna spread really nicely. Just for fun, I'm going to put some blue right in there. We're going to kind of circle around our paper waiting for things to dry. That's really important. His feet are pretty dry. Some dry brushing across his feet. And when we do this, I don't want you to paint right up to his feet. Just go right over top of him. His feet are going to be a totally different color by the time we're done with this. Dry brushing, I've said before, it helps if you hold your paintbrush with these fingers. So if you're like, I don't understand how to do that, my fingers don't work like that, put your brush down, come in with your hand and grab it like this. Then we're going to slide it across the paper like this. Not tilted, but pretty flat. We're going to use burnt sienna for this in a couple different passes. So I'm going to get some of my paint on my brush. Notice I did not switch to this way of holding it. I'm just still holding it like that. I'm going to slide this across here very lightly, just kind of catching the tops of my texture on my paper. If you're using a hot press paper, this might work a little differently, and that's okay. You do you. Now I'm going to get a little bit darker paint. I'm going to take some burnt sienna and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of ultramarine blue. Yes, I just mixed it on top of that color. It's not a big deal. It was basically blue anyways. Now you can see it's a little bit darker. It's kind of softening as it hits some of those softer pieces. I'm just going straight over his feet. It really doesn't matter. It would matter if you went around them because then it would create a halo effect. To add more texture, we're going to splatter. A really easy thing you can do is grab a piece of paper or grab your paper towel, fold it like that so it's a little tent. Even if it got on him, it wouldn't really matter. It works best if you hit your brush against something versus hitting something against your brush. I see a lot of people hold their brush like this. It's very stationary in their hand, doesn't have a lot of movement, and then they come in trying to tap it. We really need to create a flinging effect. Once it hits my finger, it's going to create that whiplash kind of effect and then fling the paint onto the paper. My finger out like this, hold my brush like a drumstick, and then tap it on my finger. Just tap, tap, tap. My paint is still a little bit wet, which is nice because some of it's blending and softening. If your paint isn't wet, that's okay too. Just mixing some ultramarine blue into my burnt sienna, and I just need a little bit. I'm not like mixing a whole ton of paint here, but you can see that's a different color right away. Just something like that. Easy enough. Look at this nice kind of effect we've gotten here. The imperfections give you a little bit of room to tell the viewer that they don't have to think that you're trying to make this perfect. He's pretty dry now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work on his comb. I'm going to put some clean water on here, and then I'm going to put the blue in around his comb and just kind of let the water do the work for me. Nice and clean. Putting in some water here, kind of all around, in around his comb. I didn't get super close to his beak because here's why. I want to come in here with a nice dry edge and define that beak so it's crisp. But I got pretty close. I'm going to get some of my blue, just the plain old blue by itself, not mixing anything in it. And we're going to come in here and kind of define his little comb. And you can see the water that I put on my paper is pulling this paint in a really cool way. You don't want to play with it too much. Here I come down to my beak. I'm going to put a nice clean line that's really important on the top of it and underneath to define that beak line. While this is here, I could do some splatters and just kind of creating some cool texture. That's going to continue to spread. I can also dry my brush out a little bit and kind of play with these edges, pulling them down just a little bit more, softening them a little bit. I don't want it to feel perfect. I want it to feel a little organic. We can also tilt it, giving that a little bit of room to grow somewhere. We can pull more of this color down. If we like it real dark, we can leave it. I'm showing you lots of different techniques. You can play with them while we have wet-ish paint on here, and I might let it dry just a tad so it's not super shiny. You can come splatter some clean water in here and it will create little blooms. So the opposite sort of effect, or similar, just reversed, of our splatters would be lighter color, pushing that paint away. Put a little bit of water on our brush and splatter. Some of those, how it starts to push the color away and create some interesting texture. But that's going to be plenty. We don't want to overdo it. The sky is not the focal point. When you do watercolor, you want to paint a little bit and let it go. Don't touch it. Put your brush down. In some cases, yes, that's okay to do, but you don't want to do that all the time. Now that this is dry, we're going to start to put a little bit more detail in here of the feathers and starting to get some of that shadow going under his wattle. I'm going to switch to a much smaller brush now for some of these details. So I'm going to come right underneath his wattle with some darker brown, blend that out a little bit, soften those edges, and use that blending to then create some of the details that we see here with his feathers and underneath here, and defining what those feathers start to look like, the shape and the movement. Burnt sienna, add a little bit of darkness to it. I'm going to go right underneath, oh, I've got a lot on here, right underneath his wattle. I don't know what happened with that, but that water just went full send right there. Not a big deal. I'm not stressed. I'm going to grab that and now pull it down, following kind of the shape of these feathers. And we'll do this several times. So don't think of this as like a one and done kind of thing. Notice I'm coming, other than right there where I kind of goofed, not a big deal. I'm only pulling from the bottom edge of what I painted down. I'm not messing with this top edge. I want that to stay nice and crisp. I do want to put a little bit more of that detail. Now I want you to notice what happens here as I shift from paying attention to my reference photo and start winging it, no pun intended. The direction of the feathers around the head aren't as accurate as they should be. I'm going to clean my brush off, dry it off, and then I can kind of soften a few of those little edges. I want this part to stay kind of highlighted. As I'm looking at this picture, these things kind of come down. Again, we're just going for the suggestion. I'm going to do a little bit over on this side. Our sky is fairly dry, so while this is drying, we're going to go back up now and put the first layer in of his tail feathers. We're going to use the shape of this brush to our advantage. It looks kind of like the shape of the end of his feather. If I were to go from here and draw a nice flat line, it'd be pointed on the end and then flat on the bottom. So I actually go this way pull my paintbrush. We're going to use the lightest color that we see there, which is a blue. We're not going to think too hard about it. Nice and blue. I want to make sure it has enough water to move on my paper. If it doesn't, we're going to get way more dry brushing than we probably want. Dry brushing's not bad. These are going to be the feathers that are underneath everything that you see. These feathers kind of come up, the ones behind, they go like this, like this. Notice I'm pushing down. I'm coming in here pretty close to his butt and then pushing down, lifting up. Pushing down, lifting up. Okay, so we have that shape in there. And then we have those big long ones, and I'm just going to put those in for now. Like that. And that's it. Just leave it. Do not come back and fuss with it. Those are going to be the ones that are underneath everything. We're going to do some really dark ones in there at the end. Now we're going to come in and work on his head. We have some shadows in here where his wattle is. A nice dark shadow underneath his beak. And then this edge of his wattle is highlighted. We're going to assume that that color is the very first color that we put down. This color is what his wattle is going to be, which means we're going to paint dark, leaving that light edge dark in here and stopping, skipping a little space to leave this edge light, and then coming in here with some shadow. There's a little bit of a light edge everywhere, and I'm going to soften my paint up. You can see it's kind of a gradual light to dark in there. We are not outlining. We are letting the light and the shadow tell that story for us. So we're going to come in, leave this edge unpainted. It's already a little dark. I might actually lift a little bit of that out and dry it off. The edge of the paint just dried dark right there. Not a big deal. It's pretty much because I came back in and repainted my bird, right? And so then it created a bloom in the shape of a rooster. Not a big deal. You can fix that. See? Look at me fixing it. We need to make sure that that is super dry. Otherwise, when we put this paint in here, it's just going to go whoop everywhere. We don't want that. We're going to use kind of this darker color that I had already mixed. And we'll do this in a couple of applications here. We're going to come in underneath his beak and leaving that far right edge unpainted. That's a lot of paint in there. What do we do? I have no idea. Just kidding, I have an idea. Clean your brush out pretty well and watch what happens when I touch my brush to that paint. It sucks it right up. Now it's on my brush. Imagine that. So if I want to pull some of that away, I can, and it leaves that nice crisp edge right there against that second wattle. But you can see that little highlight. Now, because we're going to skip a little space, we can paint this one right away and do the same thing here with this part of the wattle. I'm going to get a little bit more of that paint color and kind of come in over here, leaving that space, coming down and painting in around that, leaving a space almost all the way around. And then it kind of comes in underneath his eye. His face is going to be the most detailed part. I'm just going to lift some of this back out and soften that up a little bit, softening that edge up a little bit more too. I have that in there like that. We'll come back to it. I'm also going to do some shadow underneath his comb and starting to define that a little bit more. Maybe some suggestion of some feathery pieces up in here, putting a little bit more paint right in here. I'm going to get this darker as we go. I might just put a little bit more in there now while it's a little bit wet. Just a few little details. And we'll keep building. While this is dry, we're going to start working on those little black feathers that you see in there. What you don't want to do is do like a pattern of they're so perfect, polka dotted. We want it to feel a little sporadic. Maybe they're smaller up here or a little bigger down here and kind of jumbled together. I am going to go back to using my bigger round brush for this, and I'm going to use the shape of the brush again to create these suggestions of these feathers. My brown and some ultramarine blue, nice and dark, a little more on the blue side. Remember, mixing ultramarine blue and burnt sienna will create a nice dark color for you. We're going to use that color. We'll come in here and just kind of make these upward kind of strokes, little tiny ones here. A few little tiny dots. And getting bigger as we go down, and putting my brush on the paper and moving up. Just continuing to kind of put those everywhere. We don't want to take too much time on this, just kind of suggesting that there are some cool looking feathers in here, right down to his little feet. While that's wet, one fun thing we can do is drop some clean water on some of these and let the watercolor blend itself. My brush should not be dripping, right? It's got water on there. When I put it down, it's going to create these little droplets of water. That's what I want. But I don't want my brush to come out of my water and just drip all over. That's not what we're looking for. Just tap in a few places here, kind of blending some of those together. Clean my brush out again and blending a few of those together. I just want it to feel a little, like I've been saying, organic. Notice I'm not moving my brush, I'm just tapping. I want those to dry on their own. I'm not gonna force them to do anything else. Let's do another round on our tail. It's gonna be a little bit darker blue. I wanna make sure I have enough water in here to let it move on my paper. Not super crazy dark, just dark enough. Now I have this kind of curved one. Be a little more particular about that particular curve. I'm going to come in here like this and do that, and then also give it a little space. Come out here like this and maybe like that. A little bit more. Maybe another space. Giving some of those suggestions of highlights in there. And I'm not following my previous strokes. It's looking pretty cool. And then we're going to come down here and he's going to have a few little like free flowing fun butt feathers. Everyone loves butt feathers. He's looking pretty good. I'm going to come in here. We're going to put some of those darker red colors in there just using our brown. We're not using red actually. We're just using burnt sienna, and we're going to use that here to just do some feather suggestions like this. We could even take our brush and dry brush some of it. And he's got another one here. He's got this one down here. I'm gonna soften some of this up. Clean water. Pull just a little bit of that. Making sure I clean my brush off from time to time. Otherwise I'm just moving this paint around. Always want to do that. Sometimes it's great. I'll see a lot of times people come in here and they're moving and moving and moving and moving and moving and moving and they're just moving paint around. You gotta remember to clean your brush off. Give yourself a chance to kind of start fresh in there. We might put a couple of those dark little pieces up in here. I feel like those go there. And then we'll come back and do some really dark pieces on that edge, but we gotta make sure that that is dry before we do that. We can use that same color and kind of define those edges a little bit better as well. I'm gonna try and work on the shape of this. I feel like it goes this way and I kind of goofed that up. Leaving some spaces in between. Maybe this way is how we really want it to go. But notice how I had that color underneath and then I put this color on, and then all of a sudden, wow, it feels like it's really changed directions in terms of how the feathers are moving. We started light and we work our way dark. Put a little bit over here. We need to put a little bit more dark shadow underneath there, so I'm gonna get some of this dark blue brown color right back in there. Some around here. And there's also some darks in here as well. Now I'm going to soften that up, following kind of the curve that I have set there. Pull that down, pulling. Right, so it's starting to feel like it's really going in that direction. Now we can kind of go back up to his head and his face and put some more details in there. We need to define more around his eye, underneath the comb, and then underneath the beak, and kind of creating this shape here. We could create more of that shape. We could put a little bit more shadow in there, maybe some blues, maybe a little bit of blue right there, and maybe his little eyeball. We'll just suggest the shape of his eye, and then we'll put a little sketch in there for his beak. And he's got his beak sitting down there like that, a little bit more dark under there. And then we've got this dark right here. And softening those edges. I can paint backwards. Instead of pulling it down, paint back into the paint that I put in there. And that's a good way to kind of lessen the amount of paint if you need to. So for his eye, we're going to just do 2 half circles, top and bottom. Half circle, and then a half circle and a half circle. Line out here for his beak. I'm going to clean my brush off and kind of pull some of that back out. Too much. There we go. And then we need a nice dark spot for his eyeball. His eyeball's not in the center. It's a little more to the front. I should say his pupil. And I do think it might help to put a little bit more dark underneath his beak right here. He's got a little bit of shading up in that spot. Maybe trying to show that he's got some more feathers kind of hanging out up there. That's kind of what he looks like. Something like that. Looks pretty good. Don't fuss too much. You want to hold this up from a distance and be able to say, hey, that's a rooster. So we have some dark colors here. This is still a little wet right there. What we can do is put some of our real dark darks right here. Okay, pretty dark. It's nice and dark blue gray. And that's the color that you get with these paints, honestly. You'd have to mix a little bit more. So I'm going to put some of that here and have it just kind of run itself into some of my little dots. Okay, so that's what that looks like. I think he needs some more dots over here, actually. So while I have that color, I'm just going to kind of put some in on the edge. I'm also going to use this dark color to define his legs. So that leg right there on the back side of it, and then this leg on the left side of it also. And then we'll just put some lines in here for the feet. You can also put some little lines, dashes, dots, whatever. And okay, there's our chicken legs. Here on the edge of this wing kind of comes down here like this and kind of comes back up. These wings kind of do a little bit of darkness on the bottom of them. Clean my brush off and pull some of that. Maybe I'll pull it back towards itself just a little bit. Getting to the very end here. You know what we need to do? Our feathers. I'm going to get my big round brush again. I'm going to try and get something as dark as I can. This is a good exercise just using 2 colors, and I usually pick blue and brown because they exist more frequently in nature. You could always use other complementary colors. And we're going to go back in under this one. And just kind of putting a few more of these feather things in here. Maybe this one goes out like that too. Cool. And then put a few more little butt feathers in there. The final thing we need to do for this cool little rooster dude is put some shadow on the ground. Now the way that I typically do that is with blue. We're in luck because we're using blue. I'm going to get a little bit of that. Lighten it up a little bit with some water, lay my brush kind of flat and come across here. Notice I'm going kind of across his legs. I don't care too much. Let's take the tape off. This is always the best part. Well, in the words of Jim Carrey from Liar Liar, I've seen better. Just kidding. Not too bad. I hope that you enjoyed painting this rooster with me. I will see you next time that I make stuff.